Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, July 8th, 2013. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Brado is asked to be excused. Mr. Capro?
Here.
Mr. Swikowski?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. York?
Here.
Mr. Witt, here. Mr. Verkest?
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting and public hearing minutes of June 24, 2013. Approval of the bills in the amount of $536,640.22. To concur with the purchase of antivirus license for 3 years in the amount of $4,852. To concur with the repair of the air conditioning unit at the administration building at a cost of $2,250. And approval to authorize purchase orders in the amount of $15,853.40 to Michigan Meters for inventory replacement parts.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Support.
Well, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominello. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, there is one additional item brought by the treasurer regarding temporary hiring. I'd propose we might add that as item C2. I don't know if there's any other revisions or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the regular agenda as amended.
All right.
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. Swikowski with support by Mr. York to approve the regular agenda with the addition of item C2. Any discussion, board members? Hearing none and, I'm sorry.
May I approach?
Yep, public comment, yep.
Good evening, board members, Mr. Supervisor. My name is Simon Haddad. I'm here this evening on behalf of residents of the community who have concerns about a proposal on your August 6th ballot regarding the library millage.
Okay,
It has come to the information of the residents here that the petitions that were circulated prior to the item being placed on the ballot are materially different from the actual ballot question that has been mailed out to the residents here in the community. I ask for, and granted, based on the statute that gives the clerk the authority to solely handle this regarding the library without the approval of the board, it is, at least my knowledge, that this board as a body, as a whole, has not discussed or formally voted on or approved language to appear on the ballot for the library millage increase. It is also my perception, based on information that we've obtained, that Township's Council did not review or approve the ballot language prior to it being placed on the ballot. Now, while that is not necessarily a legal requirement, and I'm not implying that that act in itself is not within the parameters of the statute, which incidentally is nearly 140 years old and only required 50 valid signatures in the first place, I don't know how fair you feel it is for 87 people to compel a community of 25,000 to vote on a tax hike that doesn't match the petitions that were circulated.
but
I
Mr.
have with
Haddad,
me-
this is specific to approving the agenda. We do
Okay.
have a segment of the
Right,
meeting
so
for public comments.
I guess I'm asking you to add this discussion regarding this library millage to the agenda, and we'd like you as a board to consider requesting that the clerk remove or invalidate the library millage portion of the upcoming vote. I have with me copies of the petitions that were circulated in the ballot language, which if I may approach, I'd be glad to give them to you.
Sure.
You can see that they're materially different from each other. We're hoping to resolve this amicably. The counselors here for the residents as well who can provide additional information to support this. We just ask that you place this on the agenda as an item for discussion, and we'd be happy to provide you with the information.
Okay.
These are highlighted portions are what was added.
Okay.
And this is this is a copy of the petition that was circulated. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Let me approach.
Sure.
There's just one additional thing. Shiler Engel, by the way. I am the counselor for the concerned taxpayers of Harrison Township. There's a question of whether the ballot proposal as it stands is legal at all, whether the township clerk had the authority whatsoever under the law. And so I'd like to also address that in a formal manner by placing it on the agenda so I can discuss that, if you would. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, first of all, I know that this issue came forward earlier, and I understand that our council and the clerk took a look at it, so I'm looking for a little bit of input from you guys relative to this issue, in no particular order, whoever is most comfortable speaking first.
I would appreciate Mr. Engel did provide me with his review of the law and how it relates to this question. I did forward that to the board members late last week. I think it may have been even Friday. In the meantime, I had the opportunity to look at it. This language at issue was drafted by an attorney for another municipal firm. I did review it after it was drafted and concur that it's appropriate. I don't agree with Mr. Engel's position. His cites, for example, to Home Charter Act, we're a chartered township, so we don't apply. That doesn't apply. I don't agree with the conclusion that the millage can be used to establish a library but not continuously fund it. And I don't agree with Mr. Haddad's assertion that there's a material difference between the petition language and the ballot question. In fact, I think that the ballot question goes even further to giving the taxpayers a better glimpse at what they're getting into by saying how much it's going to cost, how many years, and what the millage rate is. So if the question to me is, do you think this will stand? My answer is yes. If the question is to me as to how to proceed, there's a couple of different ways tonight you could do that.
Okay. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Mr. Witt?
No, I don't understand that, I don't see a need to add it as an agenda item tonight.
Okay.
Well, I mean, from looking at this and from the last year's proposals, there's a whole lot of nonsense about a bunch of proposals back in the last election. And I know that the casino proposal, I believe, was struck down for being material difference in the language. This clearly, I mean, what's on here and what's written in this language, it's double.
You know, at this time, we're not
And-
talking about what the content of the
Well,
proposal is, we're talking about
then if
whether we should
wanna
add
talk
it to
about
the
then let's
agenda.
make it an agenda
I don't
item,
think we
because
wanna
this
talk
is-
about it. I mean, it's
I think
on the
we do.
ballot.
I
That's
think we
where
do.
people will talk about it, instead of letting
Well, I
us
think we
six
do. If
decide
this
about
is-
it.
Look, you don't wanna
After
pass
somebody
something-
comes up here, you let the citizens vote on it. That's, I
Well, you
mean,
certainly don't, this is back up for a minute. This is a citizen-driven petition to the township that has nothing to do with this board.
Correct.
Zero,
right.
okay? And I know I've been part of some, we'll just say, language on ballots. And the language here has to be the language on the ballot. It's that simple. I believe that there was another trustee that had language thrown out several years ago. The signatures were on the petitions, but because they forgot to put the period from the approved language from the election commission, translated on the petition, there was, I believe it was a period missing. And they threw out those recall petitions.
Yeah, but I believe
Every one of
recall,
them.
recall is a
But,
wholly
but then,
different set
but
of
then
laws
going
than-
back, but then going back, I don't know all of the law. All I know is what I saw on TV regarding those proposals on those casinos. And courts ruled over and over again on those casino proposals that the language was different on this petition than it is on the ballot. And, you know, I've heard the courts talk about it, and these people sign these petitions based on this language, not on this language. I think there's a legal question there at the end of the day. Whatever happens with it happens, and everybody can look at this. But I mean, clearly, there's two sentences, and then basically a whole paragraph. And the key thing here is this sentence at the bottom that is much different than this, where it says, "The revenue from this millage will be dispersed into a library fund that is under the exclusive control of an independent public library board."
Which is what's
Now-
required
now
by the
just- now-
law,
now,
which
while I
is
understand-
referenced in.
While I understand that, Adam, the simple fact is somebody that put their signatures on these petitions could inadvertently think that this township board is the one putting this millage on.
But the beauty
And-
is,
and
signing the petition, it doesn't count as a vote. It merely asks to put the ballot question on the ballot.
I
And it's
understand.
that,
I'm
it's
just-
at that time when people make the decision. I think there's an important distinction there. I don't
I mean, it's
believe,
gonna go to a court, a judge will probably ultimately decide that, but I think that.
And why waste our time
there's
talking
a-
about it tonight?
I don't see an issue.
and further, at this point, I don't know that we have the ability, well, I shouldn't say we don't have the ability. I think the ballots are printed. I'm not sure where you're at in the distribution process or
Then
where,
return
Oh, it's already out.
right? So, at this point, to say that this would be removed, would be pretty complex,
Well, it's
number
not
one.
gonna happen.
Hold on, all right. Number two, in the event that the voters decide that they don't want a millage, the question is moot. In the event that the voters do approve the millage, I suppose at that time there can be a legal challenge as to whether or not that was a valid election. But I have a hard time believing that when someone signed that saying, "I will be willing to agree to a $0.5 increase for 10 years for the formation of a library," that anything on that ballot is deceiving or materially different. What I'm reading is, here's a petition. Do you think Harrison Township should ask the voters to approve a $0.5 to fund a library for 10 years? Yes or no? Yes, I do. Well, then sign this. When they get to the ballot box, they certainly have the right to read the language, and I do respect the wisdom of the voters and their ability to read and understand the language. But I believe what they're primarily being asked to do is consider a tax of a $0.5 additional on property to fund a library. I don't see that ballot language and that proposal language as something somehow deceiving or confusing. But my thought would be to allow the voters to choose at this point and go from there. And if someone believes that that's not sound, then they can pose a legal question at that point. But it is certainly up to the pleasure of this board to add that to the agenda this evening.
If I may add one more thing in response to something you said?
That's okay, come on up.
Thank you.
Typically, we open and close public comment, so we
I-
don't get a banter, but I respect your
I definitely
intention.
appreciate the opportunity. I'm a bit concerned with the statements of Adam Witt tonight that we don't want to talk about it. I remind Mr. Witt of Michigan Codified Law 168369, that he has the duty to execute his office, and that any willful neglect of duty could lead to his removal as a township officer. To state that his actions solely responsible for this ballot, this proposal being on the ballot, and then saying that he wants to foreclose the opportunity to bring the case to you, to have this resolved amicably, is concerning. Prior to this incident, prior to this meeting, I thought it was just a case of the clerk simply made a mistake. He forgot to look at the law and see if this was even authorized under the law. It seems now that he's willfully neglecting his duty to educate himself as to what the law says, to do his due diligence, see if he can actually do it under the law. And again, now he does not want to talk about it. I implore you to allow me to present the case. It's quite simple. All you need to do is look at section 12. It says if there's already a library, you can't have another one. You can't have it enacted through this. If he simply looked at the provision, and your attorney could do this as well, it's quite clear that another library cannot be put into this charter township when one exists. It's as simple as that. And of course, I do have that information. I can provide a copy of the law to each of you today. I ask that you do place it on the agenda so we can discuss this without me having to file suit tomorrow or Wednesday in court. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna close public comment at this point. I didn't perceive Mr. Witt saying he doesn't want to talk about it from the standpoint that he wants to bury his head in the sand. What I perceive, and what I've heard from our attorney, is that we have heard the argument, we have reviewed it, and we have asked legal counsel to review it. And in each case, they've said that they disagree with your position. So I suppose it would be paramount to me saying, well, if somebody comes up with any proposal or any idea, I'm gonna ignore it? No, that'd be irresponsible. But if someone gives me that proposal in writing last week, as you did, and we had our attorney review it, and we had another attorney review it, and everyone who's looked at it says, gee, we think this is sound, at that point, I think we might say that as a body, we're comfortable saying we don't wish to review it. Not to say that we wish to ignore it or to be derelict in our duty. I think there's a difference there, but that's how I see it. Mr. Wright?
That just to have a discussion about it, this board at this time has no authority over this question. So that was my main reason for saying that there's no need to talk about it. This is a business meeting, not a let's talk about it and have a conversation. We're here to do business.
Yeah, it's not a hearing on the ballot question, right? But
Well, I think
it is the will of, if it is the will of this board to add this to the agenda, now would be the time to make that proposal prior to approving the agenda as amended. And if there are no amendments, then we'll move
I quite
forward.
honestly don't think there's anything wrong listening to what he has to say, but
I think we did.
Right, okay. Does anyone have an amendment to the motion by Mr. Switkowski to approve the agenda as already amended by adding C2? If not,
I'll approve, what, oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
did somebody already second that?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, you
I
did.
think I did, okay.
yep. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda with the addition of C2. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Although we may have a difference of opinion, I think it's important to understand, we're not, certainly not trying to be rude or ignore your position. We just believe we've reviewed it and we're good. But I certainly respect the opportunity to bring that issue forward. Next on our agenda are the announcements. A couple of things. The Harrison Township Library will be hosting Tales with Tales Wednesday, July 24th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Children will have a chance to read with Patty, a therapy dog. Pre-registration is required. Children must be accompanied by an adult. The library will also be hosting Roscoe the Clown and his Read to Me Magic Show on Wednesday, July 24th at 6 p.m. To sign up, you can call 329-1261 or visit the library. This is a free program sponsored by the Macomb County Literacy Partners. And of course, all of this information is available on the township website as well. Are there any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move to our second agenda item, item B, resolution honoring Michelle Bark, our retired senior account bookkeeper. Mr. Witt?
Yes, at a regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Charter Township of Harrison on Monday, July 8th, 2013, the following resolution was proposed. Whereas Michelle Bark has given distinguished service, dedication, and devotion to Harrison Township, and whereas Michelle Bark has served in the accounting department during her 25-year career with Harrison Township and retired as the senior account bookkeeper, and whereas Michelle Bark has provided exceptional dedicated service to Harrison Township board members, employees, retirees, and residents, and whereas Michelle Bark has assisted the township in the election process by serving on the receiving board, and whereas Michelle Bark has served the American Federal, State, County, and Municipal Employees Union, Local 1103.14, for 17 years, both as steward and vice chapter chair, and now therefore be it resolved that on behalf of the residents of Harrison Township, the Board of Trustees wishes to thank Michelle Bark for her service to the community and to wish her long life and happiness. And I offer that resolution as a motion.
Support?
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello to approve the adopt the resolution. honoring Michelle Bark. Is there any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take a roll call vote?
Yes, Mr. Witt? Yeah, yes. Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Brado is asked to be excused. Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Swikowski?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes. Thank you.
Resolution's adopted.
All right, great. And certainly thanks to Mrs. Bark for her long and dedicated service to the township. I know when I first began as supervisor, I had a lot of questions, and she was always very helpful to me, and sorry to see her go. Next on our agenda, item C1, the introduction of an ordinance to incorporate amendments to the Code of Federal Regulations regarding the discharge of wastewater into wastewater collection and treatment systems, which are binding upon the Township of Harrison, to amend Chapter 90, Article 6, by amending Sections 90-281 through 90-285. Board members, this is a request from our Water and Sewer Superintendent to authorize the adoption of this sewer use ordinance. Primarily has to do with us codifying certain limits relative to the discharge of pollutants into our wastewater system. Detroit DWSD has asked all municipalities to adopt this language to protect them in the event of, basically illicit discharge. I know it's some pretty healthy language. I don't know, Mr. Huth, if you want to shed any light on it. This is something kind of boilerplate, so to speak.
It is boilerplate. It is requested by the Detroit Water and Sewer Department for all the communities that it is servicing, primarily just for it to get their arms around industrial users that may be putting pollutants into the system that are causing issues. So a lot of it has to do with the monitoring, the requirements, the appeals, the hearing and such for the industrial users on the system. The language has been reviewed by us for this community and others by your engineer, and it really is the same that the other communities are passing.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried to read the whole thing.
Oh, that'll put you to sleep.
You know, I didn't recognize a lot of the terms. So, at the end of the day, this is just related to illicit discharge into the sewer system.
Exactly right, yes.
Okay. Because you read some of these items and you don't know what, I don't know what POTW is, what that acronym is.
They know, they use it.
And there's a lot of
the
acronyms
first-
in here, so,
Yeah.
when I was reading it, if you read it one way, it can apply to the township as the user.
Yeah.
So,
Publicly owned treatment works, POTW.
yeah, I didn't keep going back. and
No, that's all right. No,
forth.
trust me.
Yeah, there's a thing
I
there
didn't
just
memorize
didn't
it. I
like.
get it.
They love some acronyms.
Yep, yep.
They,
So this is the language as proposed, reviewed by our engineer as well as our general counsel for the township. It's been approved by them and recommended for adoption. Can further discuss, or I'd certainly entertain a motion to introduce this ordinance for adoption.
I'll make a motion to introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 90, Article 6 by amending Sections 90-281 through 90-285 and adding new sections to incorporate amendments to the Code of Federal Regulations regarding the discharge of wastewater into wastewater collection and treatment systems which are binding upon the Township of Harrison, and to publish a notice of introduction at the Charter Township of Harrison, and that the full text may be reviewed in the clerk's office during normal business hours, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday.
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Switkowski to adopt the ordinance. To introduce the ordinance for adoption as read by Mr. Witt. A discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we need a roll call for that?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Mr. Witt?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Swikowski?
Yes.
Mr. Brado is excused. Mr. Capral?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Verkust?
Yes. Thank you. Next on our agenda, item C2, from the Treasurer's Office. Mr. York?
Yes, board members, having a fun last week in the treasurer's office. Not only did we lose Lucy at the start of the tax season to the accounting department, so we were down one person. Jared Maynard, the deputy treasurer, submitted his resignation last week. In response to that, rather than waiting to this board meeting, I got with the two other full-time officials, Adam and Ken, and I asked him if I could bring in Mr. Ryan Gowing is going to be the new deputy treasurer. So I asked him, he needs to finish up his job. So I went to them and asked them if Ryan could come in and start training last week, and then bring this to concur with that. So Ryan has actually been in for, I believe, 3 days. Rather than calling a special board meeting, I went ahead and talked to Adam and Ken. And so he's come in for 3 days so far in the afternoon, from 1 to 1:30 to 4:30, to start training for that position. He will be assuming that position in full on Monday. So what we'd like, when Mr. Maynard came in, we did have him trained for much, much longer. I believe we had a full 2 weeks. This is gonna be much shorter. We're probably looking at, 30, 40 hours total, maybe less, maybe a little more, depending on if he can get away from his other job earlier. But we did pay Mr. Maynard the deputy treasurer's rate during that time period, which was $21.63. So I would like to approve, I guess, the temporary hiring of Mr. Gowing until Monday on a part-time basis.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary hiring of Mr. Ryan Gowing at the rate of $21.63 per hour from funding source 101-253-000, 704-253. And I would also like to mention that we have some savings in our budget because we're not paying for an employee right now.
Right, and that was the point when you brought that to me, and I was gonna add that. I'm sorry, you've got a motion by Mr. York. Is there support?
Support.
I have support by Mr. Capral. As part of the discussion, I think it's important to recognize that currently we're short one employee due to a retirement and the effort that it takes to go through the bumping and slotting process and now ultimately filling from outside. So we're certainly well within our budgetary limits by having this temporary employee. Second of all, it is a part-time position. We're looking at probably a $700 to $900 cost overall, well less than what we would be spending filling the permanent position, and certainly should help to make a smoother transition in the treasurer's office. But the only thing I might ask is, I know we've got a motion here before us. I'm not worried about a half of a cent, but I don't know that I think we need to make it clear, it is $21.63. I see how the math came out and
Who
understand
cares
it.
about
but
the 50?
I'm just saying, I don't think payroll can do half cents, so.
Let's,
So we'll round it off to the $21.63 as the motion said, which is what you said, so that we're good there. I need other discussion, board members. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Capral to approve the temporary hiring of Mr. Ryan Gowling at the rate of is it Gowing or Gowling?
going. Go
Okay.
Wings.
Well, it's spelled Going and Gowling, so we'll go with Going.
Yeah. Go Wings.
Yep, so we'll approve a motion to approve the temporary hiring of Mr. Ryan Going at the rate of $21.63 per hour from funding source 101.253.000.704.253. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda is item D1. Board members, at our May 13 board meeting, this board authorized the advertisement of the vacated position within the clerical union. At the May 28 board meeting, the board approved the transfer of Miss Cinda Covert to the treasurer's office. This created a vacancy in the building department for a department secretary. We posted that internally. There were no applicants, so we advertised for outside candidates. At this point, we are short one clerical employee within our entire staff. The summer vacations have further aggravated the shortage, so we're anxious to fill this department secretary position and begin the training process. We've worked out with department heads that we're going to try to keep the current department secretary for our building department in place so as to be able to train the new hire, because this is a pretty key position. We've received several applications and actually conducted, at this point, several interviews. I'm requesting that the Board of Trustees authorize the supervisor, clerk, and treasurer to hire a department secretary in the building department as budgeted, with the name to be brought back to the board at the July 22nd meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
All right. We've got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support?
Yeah, I'll support.
All right, support by Mr. York. Discussion.
I just a couple items.
Mhm.
Do we want to put the building official in there too? Because he's got a voice. I mean, it's
Yep.
been the four of us. I mean,
Sure.
You know?
The reason why I didn't include that is because per our responsibilities, the building official can't really authorize a hire. So certainly, so far, all of our opinions have been parallel across the four of us. We
I
haven't,
understand.
over more than a dozen, or at least a dozen interviews, we've generally agreed on all of them, but I don't know that we would say that the board would authorize a department head to make a hire. I think that should remain the responsibility of board members.
He can be consulted or.
Absolutely, and he has, he's been in every interview.
Yeah.
It's his employee, so obviously he carries a lot of weight.
Yeah.
One thing that I guess I want to make it really clear here in this motion, board members, is we have one more interview tomorrow, or we would add a name today, actually. I think we're pretty well set on who we want to hire right now, unless the person tomorrow. But we would like to bring them in, like, right away. I want to be real clear on that, you know, my office is down low, we want to get that position filled and get training right away, and so we can get Cindy to our office to train as quickly as possible.
Right.
So, all right,
And
I
I
just want to
think-
make that clear for everybody.
And I think the transition is not gonna be a specific cutoff date. In other words, certainly one advantage we have is that this department secretary, although it's a key position, it's vacated because an employee went from one department to another. So this new hire is gonna have, again, the luxury of having that person available, not just for a 1 week or 2 week period. You know, we discussed like, put them together to work for a period of time, then let them work kind of next to each other and observe for a period of time, and then sort of let them fly on their own a little bit with somebody nearby to help. So I think this is gonna be a relatively smooth transition, but like Mr. York said, it's something we're anxious to fill. So,
And we don't want to lose the whole summer.
that's right, yeah, we're looking at weeks, not months here, so probably days before we'd hire. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. York to authorize the supervisor, clerk, and treasurer to hire the department secretary in the building department as budgeted, subject to a 90-day probationary period, with the name to be brought back to the board at the July 22nd meeting for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is public comments, and we limit those to 5 minutes. We invite the public to come forward at this time if they wish to address the board.
If you'll allow me to speak again.
Sure,
And
no
I guess, because it wasn't placed in the agenda, I'm speaking a little bit just for my own benefit. But I would like to present to you simply what the law is on the matter. If you allow me to approach, to give you a copy of the law, and I want you to pay attention to section 12 and section 10.
Okay?
Would you permit that? I've highlighted section 12 for you, wherein it says that if there's an existing library that's created by special act of the board For instance, the motion in 2004 to establish the Harrison Charter Township Library, which is next door. The library maintains the board maintains a budget. It's quite clear that section 12 precludes the creation of a library through section 10. I think it's as simple as just reading it. But since that isn't the only matter of whether it's legally permissible, and of course Simon has addressed whether or not the language can be changed by the clerk on his sole volition without consultation of the board or attorney, is another matter. I would like just simply to make you aware of what my recourse is. My recourse is going to Macomb Circuit Court, where I'll ask for a temporary restraining order against Mr. Witt from placing on the ballot, and then I'll seek leave to appeal to the Michigan Court of Appeals, where I will ask them for writs of mandamus and quo varento, which is basically an investigation into Mr. Witt's authority to act on his own pursuant to this law. It basically demands that he show that he's responsible, that he has the ability to place this on the ballot. Again, I don't think that this is statutorily authorized at all. I ask you to basically look to common sense. This law is 140 years old. It allows for 50 people to dictate the financial future of 25,000 people. And furthermore, as just a policy concern, it seems that, and this is all allegation of course, but the interested parties of the current library got together, made this proposal, not knowing its implications. If you look at the actual proposal, it says the establishment and a taxation for that establishment of library. That's in the actual proposal. Are they proposing these library volunteers that another library be established? I don't think that's what they actually intended. What they intended to do is enrich themselves through taxpayer funding, and they're not even going to be able to accomplish that through what they demand. So again, it seems that the intent of the actual petitioners is misunderstood, that they seem misguided. It seems that the ballot itself is marred by the actions of Mr. Witt, who acted completely by himself. And again, if Mr. Witt had simply looked to the law, he would see that there's a problem, as section 12 again precludes the enactment, the establishment, and the taxation for the benefit of that library under section 10. Again, you have the law in front of you. I think it's clear cut. I don't know if the Mr. Huth's firm and the other firm that he mentioned acknowledge that issue or recognize that issue. But with that, I think I have no more to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Jim Sunstock, 31698 San Juan. On this issue of the library, I believe that you should have talked about it. It should have been discussed. It should have been on the agenda to allow the attorney to have some more input on it, and also to allow your attorney to give you input. The question I have is, who's going to defend this lawsuit when it is filed? Your attorney? And is the board going to take a motion on that to defend it? It's not a lawsuit against the township for some kind of a tort case or something, or a case where there's some damages. So that means your township attorney's going to have to do it. And I want to see that you are going to spend money, because it definitely screwed up. It screwed up, and I want to see who's going to vote to do that. So we'll be watching, but I would think you have to do that tonight if it's filed tomorrow. Moving on from that, I'd like to talk about the fire department wage enhancement millage. No, half-mil tax. Matt Sarr, the vice president of Harrison Township Firefighters Union, Local 1237, said that this doesn't increase anything. It's going to keep us at status quo. Well, let's talk about status quo. We have 27 firefighters. Only 3 live in the township. The rest live in areas with less taxes than volunteer firefighters. We have 13 sergeants or above, and we have 14 Indians or firefighters. The average salary for the firefighters is $80,000. Now, I recognize that we start with a lower salary for some of the starting firefighters, but within 3 years, they're at 60, I believe it was 67,000? 66,000, sorry. They get 8 days off a month, 3 sick days. We pay for 9 firefighters to be in the fire department, and we actually only have 6 there because of all the days off. The retiree pay average approximates $70,000 a year. I'd love to have that kind of a pension. I believe everybody in the township would. And that is with 20 years service, which makes the firefighter approximately 44 years old and able to go out and get another job, many times as a firefighter. The township firefighters use a 2.8 multiplier as opposed to a teacher, which is the gold standard at 1.2 multiplier for their retirement, and they have to wait till they're 30 years. The firefighters, when they retire at 44, get full health care for life. Looking for 2014, there's a $650,000 shortfall projected for our status quo. It should be noted that the fire department has not undergone any concessions or manpower cuts, such as reducing pensions, salaries, unpaid furlough days, any of that stuff, such as some of the other firefighters in the area, Sterling Heights, Clinton Township, Fraser, have done. Ours haven't done anything. But wait a minute, they all decided that we're gonna negotiate a contract. So they just started the contract on negotiating, and it's basically due at the end of the year. But in the meantime, they want to ask us for money. Sure makes your bargaining position pretty weak, doesn't it, when you go out and ask people for money. It should be noted that I asked the question back in November of last year, actually it was late October, just exactly what the 3 trustees that took money from the fire department actually agreed to. Because I know what I was asked. And what I was asked was that I put it on the ballot. I put a ballot increase on the ballot. And I said I wouldn't do that. Not until all other avenues were taken a look at and explored and reduced. But guess what? The 3 guys that took the money were the ones that made the motion, seconded the motion, and voted for it. What's going on here? Please, citizens, if you're going to vote, and make sure you vote because they're counting on it being secret and a low turnout, vote no on the fire department millage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you regarding having the library issue added to the agenda. You know, I was coming here, I was very hopeful. It seemed very unreasonable and very undemocratic to me that such a small minority could impose their will on the population of this township. I couldn't believe that this board would allow a 140-year-old statute, which only required 50 valid signatures, to impose that will upon a community of over 25,000 residents. Now those 25,000 residents have the burden of making sure that this is put down. And you know what? The next election, the same thing could come back. I hope that this board will consider it as a democratic counter, as a counter to the hardworking men and women of this township, many of whom are on fixed incomes and limited means, and don't have the ability to support every little fancy gadget and millage that comes along, that you allow residents to petition for tax reductions with 87 signatures, just like you will allow them to petition for a tax hike with 87 signatures. I hope that you will consider that when a resident walks in here with a petition that's got 87 or even 50 signatures on it, and allow that. I'm also a little concerned that this board as a whole is unwilling or was unwilling to openly discuss this publicly here tonight, but at a future meeting We'll probably be forced to discuss it when you will have to send your township's attorney, which is funded for by the taxpayers of the community, who didn't originally draft the petition language or review it prior to its being put on the ballot. He'll now be in a position where he has to defend it at the expense of the taxpayers of your community. I don't know how fair that is to the residents of this community, and I ask you guys to consider that. Lastly, and while, as I mentioned earlier, alluded to earlier, the statute, while it is nearly 140 years old, does give your clerk, Mr. Witt, the authority to add this item to the ballot without your approval. However, as a resident in this community, any resident in this community, a taxpayer in this community, they should be concerned that language was added to this ballot proposal that strips this board of its power to maintain any oversight of how that money is being spent. The library board, as stipulated in this law, they're appointed. They're not accountable to the voters. This is $4 million that you guys will have no control over. And that would be a concern if, to a taxpayer in this community. It should be a concern to you. And, when you've got a clerk, and granted in this particular case, as I said, it may well be within his right to put this on the ballot. However, some I's weren't dotted, some T's weren't crossed. I mean, if it was a clerk in another community, they would have probably consulted with township council about this before putting an issue on the ballot, instead of relying on the word of third-party counsel that's not retained by the township. However, now you guys will be on the hook for this. I just want to remind you of the former clerk in the township next door, George Fitzgerald. While he didn't do anything illegal, he brought a heap of legal mischief on that township. It's going to cost the residents of Clinton Township millions of dollars in settlements and legal fees to deal with all the grief that his actions brought upon that township, the board, and the community there, because his actions were left unchecked. I appeal to your sense of decency. I appeal to your sense of responsibility to your community and the constituents that elected you to please reconsider this before you have to vote on authorizing Mr. Huth to defend against this in court. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I have the speaker's address for the record?
He certainly requested.
I just asked a request. I wasn't talking to you either.
Yes. My name is Simon Haddad, Mr. Swatkowski, 37796 Horseshoe, Clinton Township.
Thank you.
I'm in Clinton Township, just like 80% of the fire department
Thank you.
that works here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other? Oh, okay.
Hi, Carol Wolf, 37837 Lakeville. One of the comments of Mr. Haddad, we are not asking for $4 million. We are asking for 0.5 mils for 10 years, which is approximately $400,000. For 10 years? For 10 years, I'm sorry, for 10 years. That's $4 million for 10 years. It's $400,000 a year. And as far as imposing the will on the people, this is a proposal, or a ballot proposal that they get to vote on. We're not imposing it on anyone. And also, PA 164 specifically requires a petition to include a rate of taxation and duration of the millage proposal. The petition and the proposal are substantially the same. The actual ballot expands on the proposal. The township clerk, he's required by law to place the library millage proposal on the ballot after receiving a petition by 50 registered voters. So, we feel that the millage proposal is properly on the ballot for August 6, 2013 election. The library serves public needs. I think from volunteering in the library, We have people that come in there that are searching for jobs because they don't have computers. We had a woman come in every day for 6 weeks until she found a job. And now you have to apply for a lot of jobs online. If we don't have a library, we don't give them the opportunity to do that. We had someone come in with a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis. No family, no computer. She came in and we helped her on the computer to see, get more information, to do some medical research on where she was at. We have college students, we have doctors, we have legal professionals come in using the Wi-Fi. We have students coming into the library to use the computer to do their online course study. We have large type books for seniors that come in and they're excited. They come in, this is their opportunity to do something. They can read, they have the large print books and they necessarily can't afford to buy them. We have summer programs that promote early literacy skills. We had 85 children in our summer reading program last year, and we're like 60, 65 this year. We want to keep that literacy going when the schools are closed. We have some programs for adults too. We had a Cooking with Her program. We had a good turnout for that. We also had a senior safety program, which the seniors really appreciated. We had Anthony Wickersham come out. So we have now operated as a volunteer library for over 3 years, and our circulation is growing and our needs are expanding, and we're asking the citizens of Harrison Township to vote yes on this proposal. And just one other comment too. As far as the establishment and funding of a public library, the ballot language is correct. So contrary to Mr. Engel's assertion, Section 10 specifically provides for the establishment and funding of a public library through a tax. So that wording is correct. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill Serville, resident. I wasn't going to get up and speak to this issue, but after listening to the last lady, my question would be this. If they're providing all of these things as a free library, what do they need $413,000 for? If they are up for the last 3 years, have been providing that. My next question is, where is the $413,000 going to be spent? I don't see anything in the ballot language about that. And then one other issue I'd like to point out, it's been brought to my attention that there is a posting on each one of the library doors that's basically hawking this ballot proposal, which I believe is against the law. It's a political statement and it's on public property. Mr. Witt, is that not illegal? It's no different than putting a campaign sign out there on public property, isn't it? I think it should be removed. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's, oh, I'm sorry.
Mark Swakowski, 29540 Old North River Road. I also was not going to speak tonight, as Mr. Serville was not going to. But I guess I just couldn't sit here and just say nothing. I don't understand why grown men would be against a library. This fascinates me. These ladies and the ladies we have at the library put their time for nothing. We are losing ladies after 3-4 years. It doesn't last. If you go back and check into other libraries and find out how long they last as volunteer libraries, 3-4 years is the limit. People get burnt out. We are all older. Our library, you can come in at any time. It's clean. The people love it. We always have people at the computers. We are all getting tired, Mr. Serville. We may have had it for 3 years, but how long do you expect people to do it? We'd like to hire somebody to take care of our library and make sure that it's going in the right direction and it's doing the right thing for all the people in this community. And if 50 people, you keep saying made a decision, we made no decision. The people that come to the voting booths are the ones who are making the decisions, not 50 people that signed up to put us on the ballot. That's all they did. They didn't say yes, they didn't say no. They said, we'll let you get on the ballot. They're not making the decision for the community. You can all go and vote no, I really don't care. It goes to show where you are. None of you have ever been in the library. Pardon me, Mr. Senstock has been there for lunch. I'll take that back. And I think it's an awful thing when grown men can come up here and try not to have a library. Because it's really not a very nice thing to do. I mean, are we not doing a good job? If we're not doing a good job, tell us about it. You know what, Jim? Why don't you just talk to yourself? Because that's the only person that listens.
Please. Mr. Sunstock, please respect the person at the podium.
Please respect the audience. You told us before to address the board. You make her address the board.
All right.
I will address the board. I will not look at you because I really don't want to. I just don't understand. Are we not doing a good job in this community? I would put up these ladies that we have in the library against anybody else. And the gentleman who spoke about 2 libraries, every library has started off as a volunteer library and within 3 or 4 years have gone into asking for a millage for their library. And we're doing just as any other library has done. We don't want another library. We love our library. We're going to have one library, but we're at the point now where we need to do more for this community. And it's time to get a millage and be able to hire people that are going to do a good job. Thank you. I'm just very disappointed.
Thank you.
I thought I would make it clear that I'm coming down here as a citizen and not as the treasurer. Because sometimes treasurer Darren has to be different than citizen Darren. So Darren York, 38964 North Point Parkway. We started out this library as a volunteer library, which I was all for. The ladies came to the board several times. We did a couple resolutions to establish the board for the library. We got the books from Macomb County. That's what drove the whole thing in the first place, if everybody remembers. And, we sat up there and several residents came up and said, oh, it's going to be a millage, it's going to be a millage, it's going to be a millage. Everybody in the room, no, there won't be a millage. You won't have to pass, won't have to pay any money. So the township donated the building. There's no cost for the building for the library. And I thank the ladies and all the volunteers, not just ladies, there might be men, I don't know, for the library. But now we're at a point where it's going to start costing me as a citizen money. I don't like that. And the citizens, under full disclosure, need to understand exactly what this millage means. We have a library board right now, and if this millage passes, what will happen, and I will read directly from, and the volunteer library people are the board of directors right now. Said board shall have the power to purchase or lease grounds, to occupy, lease, or erect an appropriate building or buildings for use of said library, shall have the power to appoint a suitable librarian and necessary assistants, and fix their compensation, and shall also have power to remove such appointees, and shall in general carry out the spirit and intent of this act in establishing and maintaining the library. I would love to be able to have Darren, Adam, and Ken and 80 people sign a petition and give me $400,000, and I get to affix the 3 of our salaries. That goes beyond this board. The township board has nothing to do with this. This is not personal. It's not personal. It's the law. If this passes, somebody could say, that board could essentially say, not saying this is gonna happen, but they would have the power to say, I'm gonna pay Mrs. Jones $300,000 to run that library. There's nothing in the statute that says they can't do that. They will affix the compensation outside of this township board. And I wish we could do that. And I will also say that that language is clearly different on the petition than it is on the ballot. And I think that at the end of the day, there will be an injunction, and the petitioner's going to prevail on that. Once again, it's not personal. I would also like to say, since we're talking about where people live, the Hug the Library PAC Fund actually is located in Shelby Township, Michigan. So if we're gonna be honest with everybody, let's be honest. There's somebody in Shelby Township, and I haven't looked up that address, but at the Macomb County website, Hug the Library is the name of the PAC, and it is somebody's address in Shelby Township, Michigan. So who really is coming into our community? Thank you.
Thank you. If there's, I'd remind the folks in the audience that we have an on-deck chair, so in the event that someone would like to speak, so that the chair knows if there are public comments, come on up to the on-deck chair. That way, everybody has a chance to address the board. Yep.
It's
Mr.
my
Maynard?
last meeting. I thought you let me break the rules.
Sure. No problem. Trust me, it's not a big rule. It's not a stiff one. It's no big deal.
I have just two topics. First, all the tax bills have gone out. Water bills have gone out. Please save yourself some time. Pay it online. It's $1. Pay it online. It's great. I'd love to see you all for the next 5 days, but it's online, so take advantage of it. It's really a nice, easy fortune. We like to see everybody coming in, but it is a way for us to motivate and to help out inside of managing our flow. So harrison-township.org. You can call me. I can walk you through it if you need help, registered, unregistered, however. Feel free to go in. You can mail it too. You can come in. We want to see you. But the tax bills are out, and so that's my pitch. Just do it online, so you don't have to stand in line and don't have to waste a stamp. You don't have to spend the gas coming down, in the whole 9 yards. Secondly, I just wanted to say that 6 years ago I came here and didn't know what to expect. Yeah, had some friends, so I sort of knew, and I had a really good boss at that time that sort of said, "Hey, do you really want to do that?" So I had a lot of advice, and 6 years ago, a treasurer was quoting the paper. Well, he just always seems to get the job done. And it's been my privilege to work for the residents and all the board members, past and present, for 6 years. And in 5 days, I start a new adventure. So good luck to you all. And I'll always be around if you need me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck.
If there is no further public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move to board comment. There was an awful lot said, some of which I agree with, some of which I may not agree with. The first speaker, I don't recall, maybe it was Schuyler, is it? Had made the statement that he believes that it's wrong for 50 people to dictate the financial future of 25,000. I agree. But the law simply doesn't say that 50 people get to dictate anyone's financial future. The people dictate their own financial future. Relative to adding this item to the agenda, we have a process. This board has a long-established process to add items to the agenda. And simply stated, one of those items or one of those methods is not just to show up at a meeting with a couple of handouts and make a pitch. But the board does have the will to do that. They chose not to. Whether or not someone likes a 140-year-old law, the fact is we're not legislators. We are not state legislators. We do not dictate that law, and the attorney who spoke knows that. If the law says that 50 people can bring forth a petition and the petition is valid, then Mr. Witt doesn't make the decision to place it on the ballot. He has a requirement to put it on the ballot. It's important that we understand this is not his right, this is his requirement by law. And again, the attorney knows that. If the petitions are invalid, and there's a process of validating them, certainly there's a process he has to go through. But this is not a decision on the part of this board or the clerk as to whether or not this should be brought forward. A suggestion was made that we should hold a vote to choose counsel for a lawsuit that doesn't even exist. We just don't hold votes to make decisions on items that don't exist. So this board is not going to consider who might defend a lawsuit that someone might file. That's silly. If there is a statement on the library doors, as most folks involved in our process know, we can provide information. This board, throughout its history, has provided information to voters. For example, on a millage renewal, we've informed people what the rate is, or what the return is, or how it'll be spent. It's not the right of this board to say you should vote for a millage or you should vote against a millage. That's the option of the people. But it is legal to give information to people so that they can make an informed decision. So certainly, if there's information posted on the library doors that is persuasive, it would be illegal, and I'd ask anyone who has that to remove it. But so far, I've not seen any information that is persuasive, but rather informational. There was a discussion regarding starting the library as a volunteer. The board supported it. In fact, it required a motion by this board to establish that free public library. And as one of the speakers pointed out, the process of establishing initially a volunteer or free library is not unique to Harrison Township. It's certainly commonplace. Most of our neighbors have done the same thing. At some point, though, that library board or those citizens or any group of people in the township, by state law, have the right to petition to have added to the ballot a question to have a millage. And that's what's been done. It's not our decision. We're not saying we're for it or against it as a body. We cannot. The millage is not this board's option, and it shouldn't be. It's a vote of the people. And frankly, although as a voter, I have my own opinions about the library millage, as well as the fire millage, as well as practically everything else that I have the right to vote on, I respect the will of the people. I'm completely comfortable saying, if the people of Harrison Township would like to see this library grow, which is my one way you might describe it, they have the right to do so by voting yes. If, on the other hand, they feel that now isn't the appropriate time for whatever reason, they have the right to say no. That process doesn't frighten me at all. Giving them that option to choose is exactly how I believe it should be. There was a discussion about the library. As I understand it, the library intends to expand the hours of service and hire help or basically grow the library. That's a choice for the voters to make. And again, about the only other issue that I take exception with, there was a discussion about setting compensation. The last time I checked, the only people that decide our compensation is us. We establish our compensation, and we establish the compensation of every employee in the township. No other body does so. So to say that the library is going to have a group of people who can establish that wage, it's no different than the same authority that we hold over the entire township. I'm not saying, again, I'm for it or against it, but Mr. York, you had made the statement that I wish I had the ability to set my own compensation. At any given time, you have complete and total right to make a motion to give yourself a raise. As a matter of fact, I think 2 boards ago they did. So we do control our compensation. And that's all I have to say.
Well, then I will debate you on that issue then, if you want to talk about that. I didn't think we would. No, my point was, it's very self-serving. My point was that you, Adam, and I can put a ballot initiative on the ballot
Yes.
for $400,000 and then be that board of directors outside of a township elected board. This is an elected board. This is a separate appointed board. And that's my point,
Okay.
is that we could affix whatever salary we want, the 3 of us, on
Yes,
that.
yeah.
And that's the law. We talk about the law. I read the law. verbatim, period. That's the law, and you can argue it till the cows come home, but the board of directors of the library shall have power to appoint suitable librarian and necessary assistants and fix their compensation.
I agree.
Period. That's the law. And I'm not saying, all I'm saying is that they affix it.
Right.
Period.
And
Whatever
I'll-
that is. It could be $2 an hour, could be $100,000, could be $300,000.
Right,
That's all I'm saying.
right. And all I was saying is we have that authority currently.
This township board does not have that authority if this millage passes. That's
No,
my point.
I'm saying we have the authority over all of our wages and the wages of the
Correct.
employees of Harrison Township. So you'd said you wish you had that authority. I
But-
was
but what
merely
I-
pointing out to you that we do have that.
But what I don't have the power to do is go out and do a PAC group and say, I want $400,000 for, the Ken, Adam, and Darren Fund, Parks and Recreation Corporation, and we are going to affix our own salary. That's all I'm saying.
And you know what, Darren, you say that you read the law? You didn't read the entire law.
Well, I did.
No.
I read it actually 2 nights ago.
Because if you read, immediately after a city, village, or township is voted to establish a free public library, a library board shall be established by the city, village, or township as prescribed in subsections 3 and 4.
We have already.
Hold on.
We've already established the board.
We don't have a board, we
Sure.
have a library commission.
Yep.
They do not, it was not a board. That
Well,
was
then-
discussed
well-
when we appointed those people, that it was not a board, we could not establish a board. It was a
Then-
library committee,
And then
and
when
that's
the-
all it
when
is.
there-
Then I would say if that's your argument, if that is your argument, then you need to go and read in here, because you have to establish the board by a 10% margin of signatures from the citizens, if that is truly your argument. Because actually, I read this last night after we received the original email from the attorney, because I didn't know where it was coming from, so I actually found this law online before it was presented here tonight. And somewhere in these documents talks about the establishment of a library, which is 10% of the electors of whatever election. The millage is 50 signatures, but the establishment is 10% of the electoral vote. And I think that was on page 2 or 3 of this. Might even be page 4. I was reading it, it's under the establishment. But whatever, it doesn't matter, it's a moot point. They put it on, it'll get resolved in the court. However it works out, it works out. Citizens vote yes, citizens vote no, doesn't matter. But I would agree that if you're going to allow somebody to put the items on the door of the library, then somebody should be allowed to put an informational counterpoint. That's why I don't put any of this on the cable, because it gets into a debate on the issue, which having it outside of these offices is fine, but in here, it just isn't. I mean, we're not running the election. If we were running it, like the millage, we can give information as a board, but I don't know, we don't have anything to do with the library at the end of the day.
Okay. Is there any other comments? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I wanted to just say, thank you, Jared, for 6 years. Enjoy your new position. I'm sure that you'll be successful, and as you still are a resident, come visit us.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Mr. President.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Tominello, with support by Mr. York to adjourn at 8:17. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.